Hello, my name is Arthur. In the last video we looked at how to put together this large amount of images into a building that will Ysort pretty well, and how to center that building properly in its own scene to be able to easily be deployed. So now we'll look at some of the stuff that's involved in making the deployment functionality. A lot of that comes from the map, and more or less what the deployment is doing is it's looking at the cell ID of the map, and any ID that's less than a value of 16 will allow the deployment, and any value that's greater than 16 is a tile where you can't build a building. And the bridge map, well, it doesn't really do anything, but underneath the bridge is a river tile, and the river tile won't allow a building to be built there. In the control script, this is where the icon exists. The icon has its own offset because an offset is required. My tiles don't have center textures, so this is the origin of a tile and the offset that needs to be put onto this icon, and this is just the cursor for deployment of a building. Later on, I'll need to add in a second area 2D and a collision shape to that area that matches this, so that when deploying a building, it then would have the functionality to go, well, there's a soldier or a helicopter in the way, you can't deploy there. But I still haven't added in that functionality. And then the heads up display is also on. It's a child scene, it's an instance child scene, so it's a scene of its own, but it's instanced into the control along with the camera. Its script is very simple. It has one button just to make sure that I could build tile number 24, and tile number 24 is the ID tile, the ID for the tile that is the foundation for the refinery. So 24, the tile number will be associated with the word refinery and be used for the deployment purposes. All deployment of units will happen, let's get over to the level, will happen within the Ysort, because that's where they need to be child of. So a building is deployed by the Ysort script, and it's basically receiving the command to place the unit. The function is sent from the control script, where the control script is all of the mouse controls. And it receives the unit. The unit is the word refinery. The word refinery is associated with the number 24. And the location, which is the tile location, because the tile location is not centered tiles, and it's building a refinery, it knows to be adding 64 to the location, because the location that it will receive is the top of an isometric tile, which is 128 in height, 64 being the center of the tile, and the reason why the refinery was given the centering that it was given, so that it will build on the right place on the tile. Other than that, for the map, what we have is a background to the map. That background is basically, it's referenced by the level script just to get camera bounds. So this script gets the camera bounds from the background map. The background map, it also hides the fact that tiles are not placed in places that half overlap off of the map, because we don't want to be able to build a building that's halfway off of the bounds of the map. So that's why the map looks like this, and why the overlap is done like that. In game, you can see a hint at that because of a slight color difference that shows when you're at the map bounds with this jagged edge. Um, well, I'm just going to leave it that way because I kind of like the way it comes across. I kind of like the way that it shows kind of where you are on the map and sort of shows where you can and can't build. So everything else happens in the control script. This has changed quite a bit since the last video that I did scripting on, and we can't go over all the changes, but I can scroll through the script enough that people can read it and learn from it what you can. I'm not the best person to teach script. I'm pretty sure that highlighted are all of the new variables since the last time I put the script on, and we have camera movement, menu, and then deploying the building, which is mostly what we're on about. And then we have the ready variables, screen size, getting the map that's the appropriate map for the deployment of a building, and the Ysort just to send the command to spawn the building. This is where it receives the limits from the level script, and it packs the map limits into an array, and the array is used by the camera movement to just know the bounds of the map. Unhandled input event. I slightly structured it a little bit different, so now it has when it is not in a state to deploy or it is deploying is the two separations for mouse buttons, and then I put the mouse buttons into a match statement just for the organization of it. I find it is much easier to read this script than it was my previous attempt. This won't need to get much more difficult. There'll be a few more function calls in here. When I get things working a little bit further, there has to be a function to remove dead units because a selected dead unit becomes a null reference, and that needs to be added in. And a little bit more for the difference between selecting a unit and targeting an enemy, so that functionality needs to be added in. But with it separated in this fashion, it's much easier to read, and with that extra functions added in, it'll be much easier than it would end up. So this is the part where deploying a building, so more or less what we're looking at. A right button will just back out. It will cancel the building deployment and hide the icon. And a button left, if it's in a position appropriate, is when it tells the map to set the cell to the tile number 24 that it received from the HUD. And the Ysort, it sends the word refinery and the cell position, which is the top of the cell that the pointer is hovering over top of, and resets the variables. Most of this is all the same as the last time as I went over it, except perhaps spawning bullets, and this comes from the unit script when it has a target to shoot at and is in a state to shoot at it. It spawns a bullet from the script. Perhaps the bullet spawning should also be happening in the Ysort. I haven't actually considered that. Select area, that's just the box select area, no change there. Camera movement, this is if the menu is not in place, it can move. And more or less what it's doing is it's looking for how close the pointer is to the camera edge, and then this calculation makes it so that the closer you are to the edge, the faster the camera will move. So you can scroll slowly or move it at a maximum speed. Then this is for deploying a building, and what it's doing in this state is it's checking where the mouse pointer is and it's always drawing in the cell position that the pointer is over top of. So now the cursor will only move as the pointer enters a new cell. It looks at the cell type. If the cell type is less than 15, that means that it's one of the ground tiles. That's before the river tiles and the tiles that cannot be built on. So anything that doesn't have a cell is -1, so it can't build there. Or if it's greater than 15, it can't build there. So it sets the icon to the red icon and says change the deployment ability to false. So can deploy equals false. Otherwise, it's going to be true. And yeah, it selects the position according to the cell position, and the offset for the green cursor icon is in the icon itself, which is in the control scene. So this is the icon. It has its offset -128. That means it will draw in the origin of the cell position. So a cell position, it's always reporting this point in the cell because my textures are not centered. And this is what receives the number 24 from the HUD and matches the value with the word refinery. So this may or may not exist this way. I might change it from value to actually, well, it's likely I'll change where the match is. It will still receive the value, but where the value is matched up with the word refinery will likely not stay in this script because this script needs to be minimized and this is not really appropriate here for some reason. So that'll probably get moved and changed. But for now, I just put it here because I wanted to get it functioning and make sure I could figure out how to deploy according to where the cursor is. So what I'll be looking at in the future is changing a second type of cursor that isn't constrained by the map but still has the same type of grid-like movement, but would be more in terms of placing sandbags and things like that. And maybe I'll use a tile map to do that. I'm not really sure yet exactly how to go about that. I may make an empty tile map to do that, and then if the tile area has something in it, you would no longer be able to deploy there or something to that effect. And that'll be for smaller things like sandbags or fixed gun position and stuff like that. But that's in the future video. Hopefully this was a clear enough explanation of how to get a start on being able to build things onto the isometric map during gameplay, and hopefully it was useful. I know I'm not the best for explaining scripts, so sorry about that, but I did the best that I can, so hopefully it's helped somebody out there. And until the next video, take care.